There is a lot to cope with in today's world. Today on the Brain Possible podcast, we'll talk to an expert who can share tips for how we can cope and recharge our batteries. That expert is Janine Halloran, a licensed mental health counselor who has been working with children, teens, and their families for 20 years. She's been helping children and teens build their coping skills throughout her career in a variety of settings, including schools, mental health clinics, and in her private practice. She's the author of several books, including the best-selling Coping Skills for Kids workbook and the Coping Skills for Teens workbook. Her work has been featured in the Boston Globe, CNN, Huffington Post, and the Skim newsletter. Janine lives in Massachusetts with her husband and 2 children. Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Janine. It's a pleasure to have you. To start, what drew you to this work, coping skills in particular?
Gosh, so I guess what it was when I was in graduate school, I remember sitting and I was really excited to be a therapist. I always wanted to work with kids and work with teenagers and help them figure out strategies that would work for them. And I remember when I'm sitting in grad school and they give you this list of ideas that you can use, right? And so I'm really super excited and I can't wait to go out and talk to people about it, try those skills out. And I remember going to like my first sort of job after graduate school and after college, and I went through those skills like really fast. Like a kid was having a hard time and we went through them and I was like, I don't have anything else in my tool belt. Like I got nothing else and you're still having a hard time. So what can we do? How can we figure that out? So over time, what I started to do was, listen to my colleagues, pay attention to what worked in the moment with kids, hearing what they had to say, like when they're calmer and having the conversation with them later to hear, okay, this really worked for me, or this didn't really work for me. And this, having some real genuine like dialogue around, okay, well, let's unpack what happened and let's see what worked and see what didn't. And then reading research and reading books and seeing what other people have done. So I kept looking for this book on coping skills. Like I just wanted a whole book where I could just look up a bunch of coping skills. And finally, my husband turns to me and he's like, why don't you just write it? You've been talking about this book for 10 years. You can't find it. So why don't you write it?
Yeah, he heard something you didn't hear.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of where the coping skills checklist and the coping skills for kids workbook were sort of born. And then out of that, it really actually came very organically. Just people would say, oh, I really wish we had visuals. So I started making visuals. Oh, I really like this deep breathing strategy. Do you have something that you could give me? Okay, that would be great. Do you have this? And so that's how I still to this day get ideas for products. People will email me and say, oh, I thought this was this. Do you think that you could maybe make this? And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
I'll add it to the list.
Yeah, hearing what people need.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of coping skills are needed, and it's getting a little bit worse at this moment. I would think for kids, especially. Um,
Yeah, before COVID really happened, there was a lot of talk about this increasing anxiety, increase in depression, even
mhm.
before
Right.
that happened. I mean, and I've seen it throughout my career, starting when I just first started out. Anxiety was not as prevalent as it is now. And it just I feel like every client I have is showing signs of anxiety. Some of them are
Mhm.
showing signs of depression. And I really have wanted to make sure that people can figure out strategies that work for them in the moment, given what's going on. And I like to have kids try things in different places because when you're at school, strategies are different versus when you're at home. And if you are in a lockdown at home, it's very different versus being able to get out and do other things, see your friends. It's that we had to call in a lot of different strategies including my clients, including my own children, trying to figure out what to do.
Mhm. Do you what are the reasons, some of the reasons? I think like suicide for children has and adolescents has gone up, and depression and anxiety like a lot
Yep.
over this entire last 20 months or so.
Mhm.
Um, what do you attribute that to? I think there's like many different beliefs and ideas, and I'm sure there are many different reasons, of course. But what are some of the ones that you are seeing or
So,
noticing?
so what I would say is there's so many different things that are happening. that you can't really pinpoint and say it's one particular thing. So
Right.
I think one thing that I've noticed is this increase in like performance and anxiety around performing well to get into colleges to do to have a good life basically.
Hmm.
And there's this like this pressure that wasn't there before. Like it wasn't as pressure filled to be perfect and do all these activities and do so well at sports so you can
Hmm.
get the scholarship so you can go to the Ivy League so you can blah blah blah. So like there's that sort of pressure in some places where it's like I really need to perform well, I really need to do a good job, I'm going to
Hmm.
disappoint my parents, I'm going to disappoint my coach, I'm going to disappoint my friends. And there's a lot of it, especially around sports, it gets really sticky,
Yeah.
where like you think that if you don't do really well on some, like if you're not at your peak performance in like 10th grade, is that really when you're peaking though? Like that feels a bit early, you know what I mean? Like if you
Yeah.
and it feels like your whole life shouldn't ride on whether or not you make that goal or you get that at bat or whatever. So there's that piece of like wanting to like this, just wanting to make sure that you're doing well. But then another piece of it is this social media piece. So I think about like what middle school was like as a girl, and it was not great,
Mm.
truthfully, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Hated it. I hated it.
Hated
And I
it.
have a middle school girl.
Right, as do I. So like I'm there, and the idea of having social media and text messages that would follow you everywhere. So like if somebody was bothering you at school, if somebody was bullying at you at school, if somebody was teasing you at school, you could leave and then you'd have the entire night to yourself and nobody would bother you.
Yeah.
Now it follows you. Now
Yeah.
if you are in a text chain and they leave you out, or you know what I mean?
Hmm.
There's so many different like sort of layers to
Yeah.
it's so connected, and there's so much more where you have to communicate and learn how to read communication on text versus like in real life. Like, are they mad at me? It seems like they're texting in a mad way. Are they? What does that emoji mean? Like, so there's all this extra layer. So that's so, and I also think not only is it like the text messages, but that social media piece of like, um, this is what your life should be like. This is what things can look like. You know, this ideal, perfectionistic sort of the curated Instagram feed is not great, especially for girls in terms of like their body image. And I've talked with actually a few of my teenage clients about like you could take a break from social media, you could follow different people, and you have to recognize that what they're showing you is not like the first pick. They didn't wake up like that. They said that that's what happened. That's a caption, kids, you know?
In the movies, they wake up with all their makeup on.
Right, exactly. Like who does that? That like, and if you did that, you'd be completely broken out all the time. Like that's not
I
real life.
know.
I'm always like, why is the makeup like not all over the pillow? Anyway.
I know. It bothers me every time.
Yeah, yes. And so there's that piece of like the social media like trying to reach and attain this perfection, um and I think it's just very stressful in general. Like there's a lot more connectivity that we're having in terms of like we hear about things that were happening all over the world all the time when we were younger. No, so you have this like constant sort of like crisis mode, no matter where you live, like because somebody else is in crisis, even though it's not necessarily directly impacting your life, but you hear about it's like very stressful to hear all these news stories, all these things about like even school shootings, like all throughout. It's very, very overwhelming and stressful. You think about, you know, climate change, like a lot of people are a lot of young people especially are stressed about that. So I think there's a lot of things that are going into it where it's sort of hard to pinpoint. And I also think we're talking about it more and we're acknowledging it more. So there's this also this additional piece of we are talking about mental health. So therefore more people are recognizing their mental health struggles and knowing, okay, this is what anxiety looks like. This is what depression looks like. Even like this is what ADHD looks like. The rates of ADHD have gone through the roof as well. So lots of different sort of pieces to it, but no matter what, you still have to figure out strategies and coping skills that you can use to deal with your anxiety, to deal with your depression.
I just wanted to dive right into that. I'm assuming, but have you seen your clients' need for recharging their batteries and coping accelerate during the pandemic specifically?
It's so interesting because right at the beginning of lockdown, I had I see a small group of clients, but like the clients who I was seeing at that point, they actually transitioned the best out of their family to the initial lockdown. Isn't that funny? Like they're all the families, all the parents were like, I like the rest of us are struggling, but they're fine. I don't know why, but it's working for them for some whatever reason. But then it's sort of like it hit them later, and I think what helped at the beginning of lockdown is that they actually got more family time. So they got more time with their parents, hanging out, playing games, dinner together. It wasn't stressed, it wasn't rushed. They didn't have to go to all these different places. So
Yeah,
there
that
was
was actually nice.
yeah, right? And I actually kind of in some ways I miss that like sort of ability to like let it all drop and just be together.
Hmm.
And I know that it wasn't a positive experience for everybody. But for those it was a positive experience for, I wish I could bring that back sometimes.
Hmm.
So yeah, I have found that, you know, as things have gone on, as time has gone on, and it's exhausting and tiring, they need to take a break. They need to not be going into as many activities. And I say that to my families, like, you can slow it down. Like, you don't have to do all the things. Like, you can just not do it. Like, if you choose not to do something, that's fine. Like, work at a pace that works for you, especially like when you're re-entering, like, what is the mask mandate? How crowded is it going to be? Is it indoors or outdoors? Like, what's your level of comfort with that as a family? And what will work best for your child. It may be overwhelming to go back. And the thing that I tell them all, even my teenagers, is like, I want you to play. I want you to have fun. Please, please have a little fun in your day because you're so busy doing work and doing all the things and doing chores and doing activities. But where is your fun time? Where's your downtime?
Yeah.
And it's so play is such a stress reliever for kids. It's a natural stress reliever. So to have them, especially for younger ones, but also teenagers who play in a different way but still play, to have them have that downtime is huge. And that's how kids can reset and adults too, truly.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, but we don't give ourselves permission to play very
nope,
often.
nope, we do not. And we should.
And maybe teenagers also more often than not don't give themselves permission to play anymore either.
No, they don't. They feel like, they might feel like, oh, I'm too old for that, or I'm not supposed to
Hmm.
play because that's what like older people do. And I'm always
Hmm.
playing. I bring crayons and markers when I meet with kids. We draw, we talk, we play games. And that's what I want to do. I want them to be able to have those playful moments. And I say that when I start with new families, I say, the work that we do, it looks like I'm playing, but that's actually work. So I'm going to play games with them. I'm going to bring in games like, but we're working, and we're helping them reset and recharge and re-energize
Mm,
their batteries.
yeah, I love that. Um, what are some coping skills for kids that you can share with our listeners?
Oh, sure. I'd love to. So I like to divide coping skills into like sort of five styles. So I think about relaxation, and in that there are two strategies I love. I love using deep breathing. So I love having kids pretend their belly is a balloon
Mm,
and breathe in and expand the balloon and breathe out and collapse the balloon. So I love that for kids. Just that deep breathing is so good for them because
hmm.
it actually physiologically can help them relax and get their body calm. Not immediately, but it sort of signals their brains to like slow down a little bit.
Hmm.
And then the other thing I love in terms of relaxation is helping kids imagine their favorite place because they can do that in school and nobody knows that they're doing it. And I want them to like sort of take a mini vacation, take a vacation wherever you are, and think about, what do you see, what do you hear, what do you smell, what do you feel when you're in your favorite place or your calm place. So I love that in terms of relaxation strategy. Distraction, I love play. I love board games. I love card games. I love video games. So we actually do play video games in my house as a family. So we're really big on Mario Kart and Mario Party. Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, like that's our family. That's
Aw,
that's
I
our
love
speed.
it.
So I love that. For sensory, I love being able to use your senses to calm down. So even something like drinking hot tea or hot cocoa and just sitting with somebody and talking, that's so helpful and can be so soothing. But like really taking the moment to like enjoy the sensory experience of having like a nice warm drink or a nice cold drink and having that moment to just sit and settle.
Mm,
In terms of movement, I love walks. I think walks are phenomenal. I would take them all the time when my kids were little. I take them now when it's so recentering for kids. Just a little bit of movement. Research has shown that like having them have some recess really helps their brains learn and helps their brains reset and get ready to take in more information. So that's
mhm.
why I'm always about recess and movement. And then finally, processing is, I really think about gratitude, finding one good thing in a
I
day,
love it.
just one thing. And like every day is not good. I'll be honest. Like I have been
Mhm.
parenting in a pandemic too, y'all. But just finding one good thing in a day. And it can be like the sun felt beautiful, like warm on my skin. I love the way that
Mhm.
flower looked. Something I made my brother laugh, something tiny, whatever it
Mhm.
is that will help
Mhm.
you sort of get your brain finding those good things.
Oh my gosh, I love all of those. Um, and we do some of those and they've helped a lot, but I mean, the reminder to play is one that I need because I don't I stopped giving myself permission to play a long time ago. And so I'm not doing my kids a service because I'm not a playful person.
Yeah,
So,
and that's the thing. Like the play piece for the adults is something that I try and emphasize whenever I can. And I actually also when I'm on my own podcast, I say, don't forget to play. Like you need to play a little bit. Everybody, take a few minutes, have a little fun. To do something that is recharging and re-energizing for you and recognize what works for you. So like I always use the example of like roller coasters. Roller coasters are my nightmare. Like the stuff of nightmares for me, right? But for my husband and my daughter, they love them. They're like all about them.
mhm.
So find what works for you. Like it's not my thing. Like I am all about like it's a small world and like a turkey leg at Disney. I don't want to get on a roller coaster. But they do. So that's their fun. I have my
Yeah.
fun, and you have to just recognize it,
Yeah.
understand yourself, and know what's going to help you recharge.
Are those recommendations different for teens and adults? Or are much of them the same?
The way I always think about like coping skills and like having fun and playing and recharging your batteries, I it's the same sort of skills. I just talk about it differently with teenagers. So, for instance, like if you think about deep breathing, I might tell them about the balloon, but what I like to use with my teenagers is like gifts or shapes or numbers that feels a little bit more adult. It feels a bit less babyish than like using like a stuffed animal on your belly, which is something that my little guys and gals love. But for my big ones, I want them to like really buy into it. And I'm like, well, here's this cool GIF and this shape, and we'll try different shapes. So like, all right, well, do you like the way this one looks? You do like the way this one looks? And which one works best for you? And sometimes I will like text it to their phone so then they can have it and they can use it on their phone and nobody knows what they're doing because it's just like they're a teenager on their phone. Like nobody's going to think anything,
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
twice about it. So it's the same sort of skill. It's deep breathing. It's the same helpful skill, but doing it in a way that works. And same for adults. Like adults can use like gifts, but also, a lot of smartwatches have breathing. You can just take a few breaths and like take a break before, like when you're in the bathroom by yourself, like usually fingers crossed if your kids are a little bit bigger, you're
Yeah.
in the bathroom by yourself, and you can take a few breaths before you go back out.
Mhm.
So it's the same strategy, just made in a way, done in a way that fits best for developmentally where they are.
Mhm. Mhm. A lot of parents face burnout because they're so busy caring for their kids and their families. What are healthy coping skills for adults that you can share?
Oh my gosh, I love this so much because we don't talk about coping skills enough for adults. I would say, I want adults to first try and like get back to that playful moment when you were a kid. Like think back. What were the things that you loved to do as a kid? How do you like think back to like how did you want to spend your time? If you had a free Saturday when you were 10 years old, what were you doing?
Hmm.
Um, think about what you love or things that bring you joy, things that make you smile, things that give your brain a break. And I actually sort of like to have adults have like a little menu of things that they can do, like things they can do inside, things they can do outside, things they can do alone or with somebody. And it can be any sorts of things. Like when I've given talks, people talk about, I ask people what their coping skills are, what their strategies are. And, they'll be like, I play this murder mystery game, or I go for bike rides, or I go for a swim with my husband every Saturday, and it's just the two of us. Or we like to go out to this restaurant and it gives us a chance to like reset and recharge our batteries. Or, I like to read magazines. Like personally, I love In Touch and People. So like it
Hmm.
gives my brain a break. It lets me sort of decompress and
Hmm.
de-stress and give my like just cleanse everything for a little bit. I play video games alone as well. Like I am an Animal Crossing fan still
Hmm.
I mean, I've been playing Animal Crossing for probably 7 years at this point. Um,
Hmm.
I like to garden. I like crocheting and knitting, and I'm not great at art, but I love it. So I
Hmm.
try to tap into those sort of, um, I try to tap into that playful part of myself, and I want adults to tap into that playful part of themselves that they can too, and to give themselves permission to do it, to give themselves permission to put themselves on the list, to take that break, to walk away, to get out of the house. And it doesn't have to be long either. Like I would love a whole day for a spa. I don't have that time.
Hmm.
Like it's just
Hmm.
not, it's not in my, it's not in my plans. But if it means that you could just go into a place for a few minutes and have a cup of tea and be by yourself and just, do few deep breaths and then re-enter your world, then that's what you need to do. But giving yourself permission to do that.
And for a lot of our parents or listeners, they don't feel, I would guess that maybe they don't feel always that they should give themselves permission to because there's so many important critical things that they are taking care of. Not just taking care of their household and their kids, but maybe it's taking care of their sick children,
Yep.
um, or healing their child, which may be a lifelong uh, journey for them. And so a lot of people don't give themselves that permission. What would you say to a parent who just kind of is resistant to and not able to release and allow themselves to have permission to do that?
I use a couple of analogies when it comes to trying to help parents realize that it's important for them to do it. So I think one thing that I've been using recently is like your phone battery. If your phone battery gets very, very low, or your computer battery is your laptop battery is very low, you kind of start to panic and you're like, oh, I got to plug that in. I got to
Hmm.
make sure I recharge it.
Hmm.
And I want families, and I say this to parents, you need to think of yourself like that. Like you need to plug yourself in. You need to recharge your batteries because otherwise you will not function anymore. You have important work to do. So you need to recharge your batteries. It seems like it's not helpful. It seems like it should be the last thing that you do, but you will be more able to manage the tough things that you have to manage if you've given yourself that permission to go and take that class that you wanted to take, to go out and take a few minutes just for a walk or a breath on the sidewalk. I mean, something to give yourself that moment. And then the other thing that I think about is refilling a cup. So, like, every time that you are doing things and you are sort of managing your house, managing your child, managing all of the stuff like insurance alone. My goodness, like being on the phone with the insurance companies, making appointments, going all these places, it can feel draining. It can feel like your cup is being emptied. And
Mhm.
I keep telling families, like, you need to refill it. Because if you don't refill it, it will be empty and then there's nothing left to give. And then there's a lot of like, you can end up feeling resentful and angry, and then you're not the best that you could be. So instead of getting to that place where you're really upset and like revenge, staying up late at night scrolling on Instagram reels, like take a moment. Like, yeah, because I've been there. Take a moment to then sort of refill your cup periodically, so you don't feel like you have to do that in order
Yeah.
to get that energy back.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about that in a different way today. Um, Kind of like cleaning your kitchen as you're cooking.
Yeah.
You're doing the thing that you need to serve your family, but you have to keep up with keeping the kitchen clean as you go along. And that's sort of what we have to do with ourselves, because we can take care of our kids and our families and pour out everything we have for them. But if we don't take care of ourselves as we go along, eventually something's going to happen
Yeah. Yeah.
to our body and our
Exactly.
mind.
Exactly. And we want to be able to be there and be there for our children, to be there for our families. And we want to show up in a way that feels good. So
Hmm.
to be able to do that, we need, and I'm speaking straight from experience. Like I was
Yeah.
there, I'm like crossing myself off all the time, right? It's so easy to be like, nope, not doing that.
Don't have time.
Don't have time, don't have the, I just like, I'm too busy, I have a lot of things to do, I need to make these phone calls, blah blah blah. No more. I am putting myself on the list because I feel better and I am a better parent, I'm a better therapist when I take a break and when
Yeah.
I care for myself.
Yeah. I know. I'm working on that one myself right
I
now.
know, it's work in progress, that's all we are. And it doesn't, you don't have to be perfect, that's the other thing. I think parents are like, well, if I don't do it, then I'm like, it's horrible. I'm like, no, you're just a work in progress. Like if you
Hmm.
think about it a little bit, if you even like start to make a list of things you like, or like write down one thing you like, that's you, you're like, your work in progress, you're like getting there, you're taking a baby step.
Hmm. And we start where we are and we move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. But don't beat yourself up over um, missing something today
Yeah.
or yesterday.
Yeah.
Why is it important for adults to model healthy coping skills to their children?
You know, so many times I feel like, and I've been feeling this more and more, we ask kids to do tough stuff. Like we ask them to handle their emotions in the middle of a classroom, or make sure that they're making healthy choices when they're doing things and interactions with other people. But if we can't show that we can also do those things, what is the message that we are sending?
Hmm.
So there's this piece of, it is okay to be imperfect, that it's
Hmm.
like, we're this growth mindset, we don't have it yet but we're going to work on it. But it's also this piece of like, we want to make sure that we are sort of demonstrating what we want our kids to be like and live like. So if I want my child with anxiety to be able to talk about their emotions and tell me when they are feeling anxious and tell me when something is upsetting them, I'm going to let them know. I'm going to model that. I'm going to say, I had a really hard day today. I felt really anxious when we were here at this place because of this and this and this. And this is how I managed it. So I could move forward and still be there and be around and be there for you. So this is what
Hmm.
I did to help myself feel better in that moment. I took this deep breath. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I took a sip of cold water. Those are all things that I did to help myself with my anxiety or my worry in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I am working on right now is I want to calm the energy in my house because it's a lot. My kids are very energetic and loud.
Yeah.
But end up having a short fuse sometimes if I just get to, I don't give enough to myself and have probably enough downtime. And then I have a short fuse. And I always regret it and realize, oh my gosh, I'm not modeling very good behavior because I don't want them to do that.
But you know what's so interesting? So I have a colleague, her name is Nicole Schwartz. And she wrote this book, It Starts With You. And she talks about this like, they don't need a perfect parent. They don't need you to be perfect, and they don't need you to be a perfect sort of example, because that's not real life. So
Mm-hmm.
when you have that hard moment where it hasn't gone well, that can still be a teachable moment. Gosh, I didn't manage that well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go back and say, like, how amazing is it for a kid to be like, oh my gosh, they just said that they were sorry to
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and they're gonna do better next time. Like, I feel like I'm always saying this, but like
They're
now,
like,
yeah, exactly, right? Like, you're like, oh my gosh, the adult is saying this. But to know, like, you can make a mistake, things may not go well, this is how you repair it, this is how you move forward. And as a parent, it's very easy to like escalate real quick. Like you can match them really easily. And I struggled with this, especially when my kids were little. And one thing that helped me was being able to say to myself, I am the thermostat, not the thermometer. I'm
mm,
setting the tone. I'm
yep.
not moving with the energy. I'm setting the tone. So I would say, like, I'd say, I'm setting the tone. I'm setting the tone. And
Yes.
luckily, I had a partner who understood me as well, and was like, he and I both work from home, so it makes it a little bit easier. So I could tap out. I could be like, I need 5 minutes or I'm going to lose it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go outside. I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to look at my garden and I'll come back in. And then
Yeah.
I can help you. But like, you need to take over right now before I lose it.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking I need to put that on a post-it note somewhere, maybe like in my car, on my mirror,
Oh,
but the
and
thermostat.
well, and the other thing, I sometimes I think about this, just I think about like putting on like a teacher hat or a therapist hat versus like a mom hat. Like, I take off the mom hat and I'm like, I'm gonna like sort of distance myself from it. Like, what would I say to a kid who I was seeing in therapy? What would I say to a kid in school as a teacher? Like, how would I manage this versus like my kid, like as the mom who's like, I can't believe she said that to you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do your kids, how do your kids, you know, are they, how old are your kids? You said you have one middle schooler.
Yep, I have two middle schoolers actually. I have a
The
13-year-old
two.
and a 13-year-old girl, 11-year-old boy.
They pretty used to having mom the therapist.
They are. My daughter she's so funny. She's like, I don't want to do second step. You've taught me all of this. I don't understand why they're still making us do it. Like, she's like, she's got advisory or some, I can't remember what it is, health class. And she's like, I already know all this stuff. And I'm like, well, other kids may not have heard it all the time from their mom.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of talking when they were little about emotions and feelings, and it just sort of like was weaved throughout their childhood. Like, we'd read the books that I would read to my therapist clients and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So, they talk about their emotions. It's not like they're not perfect, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
neither am I. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
we're okay with that. Like, we're comfortable with that, and we own when we do something wrong, and we apologize, and we love each other.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about your workbooks, coping skills for kids and coping skills for teens?
Yeah,
If listeners are considering buying one or both, what can they expect from them?
sure. So both of the books are divided by those styles that I talked about before. So they're divided into like relaxation, movement, sensory processing, and distraction. And in the books, it gives a sort of short description of these different sorts of coping skills that you can try with kids. And if it makes sense, there's also sometimes like worksheets that go along with it, or like sometimes people even call them think sheets, where you can like write down some ideas, write and process some of the strategies that are in there. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a book that you read from start to finish, but I have heard, actually, when I was doing a talk, one of the people I was doing the talk with, she said her kids would like pick up the teen book and like flip through it and like pick a strategy and try it, which I always thought was like really funny. So the kids workbook is more for elementary school.
Okay.
The teen workbook starts actually more tween. It can actually even be for tweens. So like
Okay.
11 plus. So they're very, like I mentioned earlier, the strategies are very similar, but it's aged up in a way that feels less babyish for the teenagers in the coping skills for teens workbook. It even looks different. Like the cover is darker and it's a matte cover versus a shiny cover. So
Mm-hmm.
it has a little bit of a different feel. It doesn't feel babyish or look babyish. So I really wanted to make that that feeling come through for them. And it's like this is not for like elementary school kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess at that age a lot, my daughter's 14, they feel like they don't want to be like babyish anymore. They want to move into adulthood all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
Yeah. And nothing cutesy. Like there's no cartoons, there's none of that. Like there's more, especially with some of my products, there's a lot of like cute characters and like the coping critters and all of it. And
Mhm.
for the like, and that's great for elementary, right? Like they need
Mhm.
that visual, they love that, they gravitate towards that. But once you hit middle school, they're like, I am too cool for that. I am not picking it up. So I wanted to make it in a way that they were going to feel like they could access it. And I write to them. Like I write the teen book is actually like written in a voice that is directly to a teenager. And I mention clients that I've had throughout the years, like different teen clients, and why that strategy maybe makes sense for them and it might make sense for you. So
Mhm. Have you gotten feedback from any teenagers who've done it?
yeah, it's really cool to see like there's actually a fair amount of reviews on Amazon. So
Yay.
people love it. It gets a lot of 5-star reviews. People really have found it to be helpful. Therapists sometimes will use it in offices with their
Right.
clients, and teachers will use it. I actually had a school district buy it for all of their middle school and high
That's so
schoolers.
amazing.
I was so excited because I was so thrilled that, those kids now, like as they're starting this school year, which has been incredibly challenging throughout but now they have this book and they can look through and they can potentially find something that might really work for them. That
Mhm.
brings me such joy. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, that brings me joy. I want my kids' school to buy it. I want someone at the school to listen to the podcast. I talk a lot about our school and the things we want.
Yep, exactly.
um, how can our audience find out more about you and your work?
So if they are interested, they can go to copingskillsforkids.com, and on there's a lot of resources. Just if you are looking for, great tips for dealing with anxiety, anger, stress. Does my child need a therapist? And there's also links to products that I have and other free resources that are available.
Oh, thank you for that. Um, Before we complete, I wanted to know if there is anything else that you would like to say to the Brain Possible community today to be complete.
I would say recognize that it's okay to not be perfect, um, but also recognize that you matter and your needs matter too. So make sure that you meet your needs as well as meeting your kids, because I know your audience is meeting their children's needs. They're doing it. They're doing it all the time. They're thinking about it constantly. They're on the phone constantly, but their needs matter too. So make your appointments, call the people that you need to call, meet up with your friends and do the things that you need to do, find your community, and make sure that you are taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for that reminder. Well, it was an honor to have you today. I know that you are busy and that your time is valuable. I appreciate you spending it here with me today.
Thank you so much, Emily. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation today and that you learned something new. Do you have a question for Janine? Do you have your own story about coping to share? We would love to hear from you. Let us know how we can be useful on your journey. Email us at info@thebrainpossible.com. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share our podcast if that feels true for you. You may also consider visiting our website for more information on stories, therapies, and products that we think that you will love and may support you in your healing journey. As always, thank you for spending your precious time with us at The Brain Possible. See you next week and be well.